Good morning. Really excited to be here today for an important topic that I think is very interesting for not only all of our businesses at the moment, but media is very much focusing on. And that is going to be around ultimately security and how we help with modern infrastructures. Ultimately, when we look at recent cyber threats that have hit some key businesses in the UK and beyond, there's challenges that are being faced across the board there. And ultimately, what we want to look at is how we help organisations build modern infrastructure that not only supports resilience, meeting regulation and compliance requirements, but also keeps them secure while enabling them to be ready for future requirements such as AI. I'm your host today. My name is Nathan. I am a solutions specialist at Cisilion, and I've worked here for over 5 years, focusing on our customers to drive real business outcomes from the investments they've made. I'm joined by my two esteemed colleagues, Dennis.
Good morning, Dennis Case. I'm looking after a team of solution architects at Cisilion, responsible for infrastructure and security.
And Nabila.
Yep. Hi everyone. I am Nabila, and I'm a partner solutions engineer here at Cisco, looking after Cisilion.
Thank you both. So, with today's topics in mind, when we think about infrastructure and we think about security, very traditionally the conversation would always lean around firewalls. Now, firewalls would very traditionally sit to protect our perimeters from anything coming in and anything leaving. Now, the challenge is with a firewall is ultimately is within your perimeter. So with that in mind, I kind of want to spin straight to yourself, Dennis, and kind of talk around, is that the firewall's responsibility? Is there more to that? Does that actually help meet the requirements of business?
Thank you, Nathan. And probably before we start this very important conversation about modernization of infrastructure, being security or networking, I would like to have one step back and have a quick conversation about why that becomes very, very crucial and important for organizations nowadays. And predominantly, I believe it is linked to the digital transformation journey most of organizations are on at the moment. And it wouldn't be a surprise to probably for many of our organizations that it's actually quite difficult. And what we see that organizations are starting that, they are going through digitalization of their businesses. And as you can imagine, it encompasses of creating a lot of information and generation of information storage of it and trying to capture the data as such. But digital transformation is more than that. And for me, the main difference between digitization and digital transformation is that in the digitization stage, we are just getting data. The whole goal of the organization during the transition is try to convert this data into knowledge, and from knowledge get the insight, and from insight some actionable decisions which helps business to drive the outcome and grow and be successful. And up to recently, it was very difficult, very, very difficult for organizations because you require very clever people to get this insight out of the data. You need data scientists, you need data engineers to drive these products and so on. But with the new era of machine learning, deep machine learning, large language models, and elements which helps you to make these models more dedicated for your business cases and for your use cases, makes that transition slightly easier and simpler. And as a result, it helps to build these use cases specific for your organization and get out the insight of the data you're storing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think business operations are changing. They're growing with AI and LLMs. All of these things, and what organizations and businesses need as that grows is to ensure that their network is capable of keeping up with it. The AI landscape is evolving so fast, but we need the networks to evolve with that.
Yeah.
We need the networks to be resilient, robust, and secure as well, and to be able to handle everything that's going to be coming through it.
Very well, and I completely agree with that as well. And I think that what comes to mind as well is kind of level of analogy we can build between these processes. And it's similar to what we can consider our infrastructure, our business is like a very nice two-story Victorian house, let's say, which we love and love living. It gives us joy. It can be broken a little bit here and there, and we can fix it and keep operating there. But the challenge is, if we want to go to the next level, we want to build 10-story, maybe not a high skyscraper. That's what kind of cloud providers are doing. But a high rising building, 10-story building with a nice rooftop and a lift, and helps to elevate the business to that level. And in all this situation and consideration, that if we just want to convert the loft in the Victorian house into a wall, it's fine. If we start considering building these additional stories on top of the two-story building, what would crumble most likely is the foundation, and it wouldn't be sufficient any longer. And if we take this analogy to the digital transformation and to infrastructure modernization that we're talking about, infrastructure is this foundation for any building or any organization. If we're not having the right infrastructure, it will not allow you to grow. It will not allow you to go up. And that's where we need to consider all these elements of infrastructure, which is ready for the next challenges, which provides robust, secure, modern, fast, at the same time flexible and operationally efficient solutions, which helps organizations to reach the new goals and the new heights.
No, 100%. And I suppose with that in mind, obviously we began that, and it's a really important kind of history element. I love the analogy because ultimately, when security was kind of considered from a perspective of infrastructure, we focused very much on those firewalls. But actually, you're right, when we've got a change occurring in terms of business operations, you can't just keep building on top and on top. So is there a particular element that you think from a kind of design or architectural perspective that's caused a change there, that's meant that you can't build it within house?
Well, it is a very fair observation. I think that's where, if we're talking particularly about infrastructure, security infrastructure and security infrastructure modernization, we all know, again, the analogy of the moat and the castle and how we used to protect our data, because that's what we're talking about here. We're trying to protect our crown jewels, our IP, our kind of information which makes us unique and different. And it's no longer just to protect your entrance. You need to see what's happening inside. You need to compartmentalize your environment. You need to move from firewalls to zones to segmentation, and all of that also driven by the fact that more and more regulations are being issued and need to be compliant with. And auditability is a very, very key point in any infrastructure nowadays. We need to ensure that when someone comes and asking, what are you doing with my data, we actually can prove that it's safe and secure, and it is kind of used by the use agreement between organizations as well.
No, 100%. And taking that kind of another step, so fundamentally, a firewall can do an incredible amount for an organization, but clearly a standard firewall, regardless of the vendor, can't do enough when you've got that change from castle to moat, as you've described there, and when you're building from that kind of Victoria house to enhance and lift up the business, you need to have an approach that can kind of scale, taking into consideration that your applications might not be inside that castle. Likewise, your users are remotely dispersed, and your data sets, your key IPs you called out, could be anywhere fundamentally. Now, since Cisco obviously are continually enhancing that, and with that in mind from kind of a Cisco perspective, is there anything unique you're doing within that kind of firewall space that enables that to scale appropriately and drive that right outcome?
Yeah, 100%. And I love your analogy of the castle and the moat and how, that once was enough. It's not anymore. It's simply just not enough anymore. Businesses are everywhere now, on-prem, in private, public clouds, SaaS applications. So security really does need to be everywhere as well. So that's where Cisco Secure Firewall comes in. And it enables what we call a hybrid mesh architecture. It's about having consistent security policies applied across all your environments, so all the different business environments, no matter where the data or the applications live. So wherever those crown jewels are, we want security all around it. So, in terms of that castle and moat, rather than just having that security enforcement at the front gate, you've got, strategically placed, highly trained, professionals deployed throughout the whole castle, so throughout the entire infrastructure. And, the big win here is unified security with less complexity as well for IT teams. You mentioned that there's needs for, data scientists and security people. Not all organizations have that. And, having this unified security approach just makes it a lot simpler. There's fewer security gaps for attackers to exploit, and ultimately a much stronger defense against breaches, faster incident response, and stronger compliance posture as well. Essentially, it's about making security an enabler for your hybrid operations and not a bottleneck.
I think that's really important to be fair, because absolutely not every organisation does have that level of expertise within house, or if they do, it's normally quite lean teams. So having a solution that can scale appropriately for them while ensuring they have that kind of protection across the board, not just at one point, but at all points, is critical. And to be fair, with that in mind, and especially on the points we're making there, this does go beyond the firewall. Again, you may have a firewall that's in there, especially if it has a hybrid mesh capabilities that can scale appropriately. But it's the whole infrastructure design, scaling it in a suitable way. Now, kind of taking that in mind, is there any particular approach that can be taken from outside of that traditional security appliance perspective, aka the firewall, Cisco secure firewalls, that can be done within the campus infrastructure, aka we're beyond that kind of perimeter element? And yes, there could be multiple elements of that.
Yeah.
But where does that sit when you think of that traditional infrastructure and that network?
Yeah, definitely. I think security needs to be embedded everywhere. And if we're going back to that analogy of sort of a house and you're modernizing that house, if we think about a security incident or a breach like a fire, if you've got a house, and essentially what we want to do with that house is ensure that every floor, every room, even every closet is fireproof, it's got its own fire suppression everywhere, rather than just one fire extinguisher at the front door. It makes it easier to put that fire out. If it's in one room and it stays in that room, you can put it out there, rather than if the fire spreads across the entire building, it's a lot harder to put out. So essentially, that's what we're aiming for digitally. And we're doing that in the campus with Cisco software-defined access, so SDA. We're moving that security beyond just the fire extinguisher at the front door, and we're putting it into every single part of the network fabric.
Okay.
It means that you can segment networks dynamically. You can apply granular access controls and access policies based on user identity or device posture, and really contain threats within that campus network, so that if something does happen, it limits that lateral movement from one room to another, or one floor to another, one building to another. It contains it, so it's easier to put out that fire in that one place than it is once it's spread.
Yeah.
And looking ahead as well, technologies like Cisco Hypershield are taking this even further. So Hypershield is designed to distribute security controls across every layer, so whether that's compute, network, application. And think of it like having those security policies built into the digital bricks and mortar of the infrastructure, which can move and adapt automatically with your workloads. It reduces the blast radius of any of those potential breaches, and it means that a compromise in one area isn't going to take down the entire operation. So, having that security embedded into the bricks and mortar means that if you've got, one loose brick, the entire wall isn't going to come crumbling down. So it's all about that data protection and business agility as well. Yeah.
No, and that makes a lot of sense because I suppose reality is, and that's quite a multi-layered approach there, which is really important because sometimes you may have a small fire occur ultimately, whether that be from a security threat perspective or from a leak perspective ultimately. But the point being here is, you're covering yourself at multi angles so it doesn't become a catastrophic event and actually can be controlled within a small segment. Dennis, when we think of kind of what we do within our customer base there, how do you kind of take it with your teams in particular to ensure that we can take that kind of multi-layered approach from consideration of keeping them secure but making sure that infrastructure achieves enough? How do you go about that with our customers?
Yes, of course. And I'm very glad to hear from Nabila what's happening with Cisco in their approach to the new technology and new frameworks, how to create security, how to simplify security. And being that hybrid mesh firewall, which ultimately, as you mentioned, it's regardless whatever form factor we're having, we can deploy that protection, that control within the area where we want it to deploy. We can use multi-cloud defense. We can do any elements of that and deliver consistent policies and consistent configuration of these policies across the devices, which can be handled in different way or could be handled in different way. But arguably, with all even developed enhancements in technology, there are a lot of, again, very, very exciting stuff happening without a doubt. I would argue that when we talk to businesses, their main kind of priorities are not about how cool the technology is. It's interesting for us. It's interesting for technical personnel, for guys who are operating that. But business focuses on a different fundamental, and that's how our engagements are happening with the customers as well. First of all, we need to understand what their pain points are, where they are, and understand what they're trying to protect, what their goals are, where these crown jewels are, in order to, again, get better understanding of their business and understanding what their goals are, how and what they need to protect. And that leads to overall driving our conversations and engagement based on the business outcome of business desires, business needs. And in many cases, we're seeing as the kind of very often used factors for consideration are enhancing security posture, without a doubt. As we mentioned, we all need to think more about protecting our data nowadays, and it's coming from different angles. Of being cybersecurity and cyber threats and so on as well. Also, regulatory compliance requirements, which are increasing continuously, and if organizations need to maintain their level of certifications and accreditation to certain standards, they need to deliver a certain level of controls inside their architectures and infrastructure. That's where, again, focusing on the enhanced security posture is very, very important. All organizations, as Nabila rightly mentioned, many organizations are struggling with getting personnel, enough technical personnel who are capable of driving these activities around the infrastructure on a continuous basis in business as usual, not to mention going to security analytic level and threat hunting and so on. And that means that if these solutions are helping to simplify operations for the teams and bring more value to the organization, that's what always the way. That's where I generally believe hybrid mesh firewall solution is bringing that, because it creates a single place where we're defining policies and pushing them, again, regardless where they would be enforcing them. Business agility is another element, because in the nowadays, organizations need to change more often than they want sometimes, and that lead to the need that building infrastructure which is flexible enough and can react on the changing business needs. And if we can ensure that whatever we are protecting is having this feature, that's what obviously plays very well with business leaders we are talking to. And probably last but not least, with all the security we are trying to put against around our crown jewels and around our data, processed or not processed data, it still has not a lot of value until someone is using it. And these are users, these are people who are leveraging this data for their day-to-day activities, for their business decisions, and so on. And what the goal of any business leader is to ensure that people, their users or their customers, have continuously improved quality of the experience when they're consuming their products, their data, their technology, and so on. And that's what needs to be taken into consideration, that security for the sake of security will not help. We need to make sure that users who are using it are happy and have very good quality experience.
I think that's a really important point, actually, because again, there's multiple elements there that you covered, but focusing first quickly on that user experience is sometimes we do see, unfortunately, organisations that stack security on security on security. And in many cases, obviously, we need to keep the business protected, we need to protect the brand, we need to protect the data, but inadvertently you create massive levels of complexity. And in many cases, that level of complexity doesn't then reflect to it being more secure just because you've stacked multiple things on top of each other. And actually, when we think about going to work, in reality, obviously we're all technical people, we understand and we're quite passionate for what we do and what we learn. But, when people go to work, the reality is if you just turn on your device, you sit down and you expect whether it be application in your own premise or whether it be a cloud provider, whether that be data, again, that you control or elsewhere, you just want it to work. And we have to ensure, back to the kind of brick and mortar perspective of it, as you scale and create that agility, that you've got that infrastructure that can do that, but you cannot forget the user experience. Probably one of the most important elements on top of security. If the user's having a bad time, ultimately they may not be able to work efficiently, or there'll be a loss of potential revenue for businesses where staff cannot literally do their jobs. Now, when we think about that, and I suppose from a user experience perspective, is there an approach that helps when we've got customers that are quite clearly in the cloud, public, private, got their own environments? How do you do that when you then have the new way of working, which is, quite literally, you can work from anywhere, and businesses are empowering that. You see, there is a drive to return to the office, and that increases productivity. But how do we control that when we then start thinking about the infrastructure that's outside of our traditional readiness? From a kind of Cisco approach there, is there a way that we can ensure, our infrastructure is secure, but our staff can efficiently work?
I can probably pick it up, and I agree with you. And that's, as I mentioned, I genuinely believe that user experience is quite important. And as a result, we're also quite aware, regardless of the recent trend of trying to bring people back to offices and so on, it's not about where people are. It's not about where the users are. We should ensure that our users or customers can access data and applications they need regardless of where they're working from. Office, coffee shop, home, shared environments, whatever it is. And they need to do it at a good quality experience with a consistent security and obviously well managed and protected and audited by the organizations as well. And for that simple reason, the new direction where many of the organizations are moving towards is trying to employ technology like Secure Service Edge, which helps organizations to actually to simplify approach to the security and access to the data. Because instead of having multiple ways of accessing, like you can have front door to the building, you can have back door to the building, and so we just have one defined entrance, and everyone going through that. Everyone going through access control system with a badge and so on, being authenticated, being understood who the person is, what posture of the user is in terms of security, and what access will be allowed in this case to this user to have access to. And solution from Cisco Systems, you're probably quite aware, based on the previously well-known product like Cisco Umbrella, right now with extension to the private access as well, Cisco Secure Access, plays a huge role in that. And it's not just simply kind of copy of the other solutions which have been on the market for some time, to be fair. I think the huge advantage of a particular solution from Cisco is that their approach to private access was quite redefined. And they having the idea that it shouldn't matter and users shouldn't be caring much where they are and how they're connecting. It's system should really to have one of the best methods, best media, best technology and protocols and so on to use in order to have access to the applications they need. Being that tunnel to the VPN appliance, being it ZTNA access or using quick protocol or whatever it is. Users should have very transparent view and best experience depends on where the user is, where it's working from, and what their security posture is. And that's what I think is quite unique in the proposition from Cisco Systems.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think having that distributed workforce, you still want to have that unparalleled experience regardless of where you're connecting from, and that secure connectivity is absolutely essential. I think from Cisco's side, the key to making this all really seamless and effective is through like digital observability and having a unified single pane of glass approach across the portfolio. So you did mention a couple of different Cisco security solutions there, and we know that organizations have those diverse environments with a range of different solutions and products. But what we have is Cisco Security Cloud, and that strategy around Cisco Security Cloud brings together those solutions that you mentioned. So like secure access for zero trust, secure firewall that we just spoke about, Duo as well for identity. So like Duo push notifications, and SD-WAN as well, all into one cohesive platform. So it's no longer just a bunch of different point products. It's all one integrated system that shares that intelligence and, like you said, enforces those consistent policies regardless of where the user is. What's really powerful as well is how security also links in with network performance and back to observability that I was speaking about as well, with Cisco Thousand Eyes, and my shirt is actually a Thousand Eyes shirt today as well. But with Thousand Eyes, you get that sort of really unparalleled full stack observability across your own network and also beyond that as well. So it means that you're not only seeing security alerts, but you're also understanding the network performance, the user experience, whether that's in your own network, the internet, SaaS applications, and so on. Like you mentioned, any sort of downtime or not being able to access things impacts revenue, impacts business, and that's what's important, right? So having this really comprehensive diagnostic tool for your entire digital operation is so valuable. But I'll let you speak a little bit more about Thousand Eyes.
Yes, I agree with you, and that's definitely a very huge tool for observability and troubleshooting. But what I also find very, very important element of it is that level of assurance the tool can provide to the business leaders as well, technical teams, because in the time when transformation happens very, very quickly and operations changes and applications being moved from public cloud to on-premises and back or whatever it is, it's very, very important, as we already touched upon, to ensure consistent and ideally improved user experience. And it can't do better than that if you are continuously monitoring and testing your infrastructure and reachability of services and quality of user experience based on these services, which happens before or after the event. And if you have these clear definitions, clear parameters, clear metrics, you can very easily to articulate whether your transition was actually a success, and success not just from technical perspective, but success from the end user perspective.
I think that's interesting, and it's just kind of taking a second to reflect on a couple of these points. So effectively, what we're saying is, designs of infrastructure has dramatically changed. That traditional data center or hub and spoke scenario where everything goes to some new control is clearly no longer applicable. Users can be anywhere, data is anywhere, can be in your control or outside. Cisco, and just to mention a couple of that, you effectively have the tools that can cover that from whether it be point products, depending where a customer's journey is, if they want your firewall approach there, you can do that, which doesn't just handle the inbound, outbound router, but inside.
Yes. Yeah.
You've got network infrastructure that scales accordingly, so you can have that full segmentation approach. So you can design infrastructure in a way that enables your business to scale, meet regulation, compliance requirements. And then from a user experience, which is so critical, ultimately there's another platform there, but all of these platforms fit together as one unified experience for managing, driving a design perspective, not only for a business, from a commercial perspective, fitting all together very nicely. So they can have a unified solution that is not just, unlike other vendors at times, a point product stitching together, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like these different things combined together, ultimately, if we're talking about, the impact on the business, it helps to, like you said, improve the user experience, reduce downtime, faster problem resolution, all of those things, so you're really keeping an eye on and ensuring that the entire digital estate is safe. And again, if we're going back to that sort of fire analogy in the building, it's no longer sort of a reactive firefighting. It's actually proactive monitoring, observing, problem solving, sort of, to ensure that we have those fires less and we can put them out quicker. And it's just huge for productivity and user satisfaction and just ensuring that everything is just performing at its best.
That makes complete sense. And to be fair, from a Cisilion perspective, absolutely, the goal is always to drive that proactive element. So the tools and the technology align with that, and then we combine that with the likes of our kind of managed services to ensure that then we can take away the element of a customer worrying about just reacting to issues, but actually be able to drive proactive response using the likes of things like Thousand Eyes, for example, there. So then they have that real end-to-end observability around that digital experience, which ultimately, as you alluded to, could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, that's quite a broad conversation, obviously, there, and obviously it begins with ensuring that security of the business. Now, with that in mind, and I feel quite impressed because we're about, I think it's about 30 minutes or so into this one, and we've really managed to not use the word AI. I don't think, I mean, we've spoken a little about large language models, obviously a key fundamental on how AI works. Obviously, to a lot of businesses, so AI, they view it as just, taking away the power of tools like Copilot or ChatGPT. Obviously, they're kind of just really, language models that let you query for information from a broad set of data. Obviously, for a business that really wants to empower and use AI to drive quite bespoke outcomes, whether that be in the NHS or whether it be in a private legal organisation that's looking to drive efficiency. Now, when we think AI now explicitly around kind of that infrastructure side, there's two angles here. One is what Cisco doing from a product perspective. You've got tools like ChatGPT and Copilot that you can query and get really cohesive responses to. How does that link to what Cisco's doing in terms of enabling easy, digestible, usable tools that drive real value? And then the second point is, how does it work for organisations that do really want to build their own? Right? They want something that relies on their, as we've called it a few times, their crown jewels and their data without letting it go out to the outside world. So we'll take 2 points here, if I may, towards yourself, remember. From a tooling perspective of AI from Cisco products, how are you kind of approaching that with considerations of people consuming as they perceive AI in terms of those tools such as Copilot?
Yeah.
How are you approaching that within your tooling?
Yeah, so like you said, there's a couple of different angles there. I'll speak a little bit about Cisco AI Assistant. So that's something that lots of customers are already using to help to accelerate sort of their network operations, to streamline tasks, bringing those benefits to, automate tasks and do sort of looking for patterns and so on and giving recommendations. In terms of AI, like I said, there's quite a lot. In terms of security, at Cisco, we've got a team called Talos, And I think they're actually one of the largest non-governmental security teams out there globally. And they're using AI every day to analyze billions of threats daily, spotting new attack patterns and 0 days, really fast, and really staying up to date, because as AI is evolving, threats are also evolving just as fast. AI can be used for great things, but it can also be used in different ways, quite maliciously, and it means that the threat landscape looks a little bit different, and it is evolving faster than ever before. So that's where like our security teams that are here for you and your customers, Talos is really keeping on top of that. But other than that, we've had a couple of more recent innovations that we've announced from Cisco. So things like Cisco AI Canvas, which brings cross-domain intelligence together for faster, more collaborative troubleshooting across your entire infrastructure, which again is absolutely critical for that rapid security response. So it's quite a new release. It's very dynamic, and it's a dashboard essentially that gives you insight into the network, into the operations, and you can sort of see everything dynamically, which is great. And I will have more to share on that in the upcoming weeks and months. It is fairly new, yeah. But yeah, I mean, aside from that as well, we've got the idea around actually protecting AI itself. So there's lots of things about what AI can do for us and for our businesses and for our network and for our security, but we also need to make sure that organizations are protecting the AI infrastructure and the workloads themselves. So, as businesses adopt AI, their models, the training data, the inference engines all become prime targets. And if AI is going to be the brain of future operations, or the crown jewels, I suppose, then we need to secure that. So focusing on securing the entire AI pipeline from the data input to the model deployment. So again, using microsegmentation, Cisco secure workload, and things like Hypershield as well, to just really make sure that the infrastructure that is supporting AI is resilient and it's secure.
That makes sense. And so ultimately, you've got the tooling that enables us to build those modern infrastructures that can drive business outcome from anywhere with anyone. We've then got tooling that can enhance protecting from AI capability, but also, from efficiency perspective, having those kind of tools, those assistants that you put down, I think is so important because there's so much to learn, there's so much to understand, but actually, if you're making some changes, actually be able to ask for a tool that has a database such as Cisco's that drives connected to your tech tooling, etc., they can really understand actually this is a problem, this is how we fix it. Just empowers the support teams dramatically. And I suppose, Dennis, from your perspective, what we're seeing inside our customer base in the same perspective there, outside of what tooling a vendor may provide us, how do we keep driving that modern infrastructure to be ready from that AI perspective, enhancing and enabling business to use that bespoke for themselves?
And that's where, as we started our conversation from, we are often building this very robust foundation which helps organizations to grow. And if you want to grow up or you want to go sideways or whatever, you need to have something which is very, very flexible and robust on the foundation level. That's where leveraging new technology, leveraging new approach to designing and architecting infrastructure is quite important. I completely agree. Most of our customers probably will be focusing on building solutions and products based on the AI or LLM models. And as an outcome, what they're trying to do, they're trying to build their own applications or leveraging data they have in the house in order to augment the existing LLM models and so on. And that's where AI defense as a product comes very, very handy, because it also creates a sprawl of used model by the developers and so on. And AI defense helps with the asset discovery and visibility to understand actually how many models organization is using right now. Is this model safe for different parameters? Does this model provide the valid response, and whether it actually prevents users of kind of having the wrong questions asked and providing answers which can jeopardize the reputation of the organization, because that particular client or agent was not designed to control these elements of information. Real-time model validation is extremely important. That's what we're talking about, because it helps identify vulnerabilities, prevent data leakage, and kind of prompt injection, all the other kind of adversarial threat activities, which can lead to the problems for the organizations. And that comes from the kind of products itself, which helps to get visibility, control what the user is supposed to be using the models for, and whether the models are safe. But on the other side, we all looking into optimizing operations of hardened environments, and that's where, as Nabila mentioned, AI systems and AI can't cover some very, very important elements, because they're fitting very well into new Cisco agentic ops paradigm, which focusing on building these AI-enabled tools to help network and security practitioners on sites actually enhance their capabilities and be more ready to respond to the threats that are coming to their way, or to ensure that their infrastructure is as robust as they can expect. For example, Cisco working on, as they call it, Cisco Deep Network Model, which is kind of bespoke or large language model purposely built based on decades of networking knowledge from Cisco systems, which without a doubt will be extremely helpful for any organizations who are using Cisco products.
I think it's an interesting one, because again, there's kind of two sides to this conversation, which you've covered both, which is, building your own, effectively having your own environments, taking your own data, using those large language models, and to review and learn that data with lots of GPU clusters, which is obviously doing NVIDIA very well at the moment. But the flip side of that is obviously just consuming AI SaaS products, you could argue, and obviously we're a big Microsoft house as well as a Cisco partner there, and we're seeing a lot of conversation around the use of Copilot, etc. Now, the reason I call that out is from a modern infrastructure perspective. Even if you're not intending or thinking of building your own, you're the kind of size you're like, actually we want to just consume it, opposed to having that in-house expertise. Even consuming it requires new modern infrastructure. The reality is, those queries to those Copilot style tools, that consumes additional bandwidth, considerations across the network, and you have to have the highest level of performance. You can't have lots of users all querying a large language model, consuming lots of data sets without building appropriately. I think we've covered quite a lot in this brief, about 45 minutes or so. I think the reality is kind of a closing point that to build a secure, a scalable infrastructure that can be AI ready, that can protect business, but also the most important again is driving that best user experience, does require kind of multiple elements. And you need the right tooling like that, which by all accounts Cisco has multiple layers there that can cohesively sit one solution. You also need then a partner ultimately that understands and can join those dots together to help you understand where to fit each product, because not everyone may use all of Cisco. On the flip side, you might be at a point where it's a case of redesigning. You've got your beautiful Victorian house, but you want and you need to scale that appropriately for business demands due to the success of the organisation. So what I would say is, one element I would love to see is obviously these are a lot of thoughts, ideas. What we're doing is taking our customers through this through our client experience centre, where we really deep dive and understand where you're at, but more importantly, where your business needs to go based on the drivers you have, whether that be due to regulation or compliance perspectives, or if it's due to organic growth or demand new changes in terms of technical innovation. So what we would love to do jointly as well is have you inside our client experience centre with Cisco joining us, or through Dennis and his expertise and his teams, or even myself to help you understand what can be done from technology to that business outcome, ensuring it all combines and we create that robust, secure, modern infrastructure for you. With that in mind, thank you so much both of you for today.
Thank you.
I hope everyone found that really insightful. And of course, we're always welcome to have following conversations and ensure you have that secure modern infrastructure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.